Hey guys, how you doing today? Oh, that was loud. Welcome. First session. Are you pumped? Yeah. Did you see the keynote address? Yeah. Did you enjoy it? Wasn't she funny? She was crazy. Great. All right. So I'd like to welcome today Scott Josephson, and he is. We're very lucky to have him here today. He's a veteran of the industry, an absolute pro. He's worked with Serena and Venus Williams, Jennifer Capriati, Chris Everett. Very hands-on, and also on the advisory board of sports nutrition for the United States Olympic Committee. All right, I'm just going to read a little bio about him. Scott is the Director of Operations at Hippocrates Health Institute in West Palm Beach, Florida. A registered dietitian, he presents at conferences throughout North America and has received numerous awards, including the 2005 Director of the Year for Teaching Excellence and the 2010 Specialty Presenter of the Year for CanFit Pro. Scott is on the international advisory boards for CanFit Pro and American Fitness Professionals and Associates, and has worked with numerous sports celebrities, like I've just mentioned. He's also worked with athletes of the New York Giants and New York Mets. So let's give him a warm welcome, everybody. And welcome Scott to the stage. Thanks, Scott.
You okay volume-wise on that? You here? You guys here all good? You can all see, that's for sure. All right, well, the excitement's overwhelming. That's very nice of you to show up. Appreciate that. Let me tell you, this was the farthest trip in the history of mankind. It's far, man, but it was awesome. And what an amazing, amazing place. My only downside is I got to kind of show up, and I wish I could stay for a long time, but I promise next year I'm hanging for like a week or two. What an amazing, amazing place. And as you can probably tell, I'm from the States, of course. I'm from sunny South Florida. That is home of the deconditioned senior with expendable income. And man, cool place to live, I got to tell you. Not a bad thing. So one thing I always share, I'm going to be with you all weekend long, and I do appreciate that you're here. One thing I do is I do my homework. You've got all sorts of lectures to pick from and all sorts of stuff to go to, and you chose to come here. So I'm extremely, extremely appreciative of it. And again, I do some studies, I do my work, I put together a lot of material. And if you walk out of here and you learn one or two or three things, then we hit a big-time home run. We did okay in the process. And really cool subject, too, because we all kind of understand a little bit about sugar. And one thing we love to do is eat it and drink it, too. It's all kind of good, too. So whatever we do, you got a lot to absorb, a lot to learn. The only thing I always share is take a deep breath, It's all okay. Shoes off, feet up. Maybe not shoes off, we're at a fitness conference, but feet up, take a breath, calm down, ask a bunch of questions, hang tight, we'll be in here for a while. And again, I'm extremely appreciative. A lot of options you have to come to, and you chose to come here. So again, thanks for doing that. One of the neat topics to talk about really is about sugar, and under the general umbrella of sugar, there's a whole lot to discuss, and things that we consume, things that we drink, and cover a whole lot of things here, and really tell you, listen, what is this product? What are the claims? What's it supposed to do? What does it really do? Who did the research behind it? And again, in the States, we have an organization known as the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and here in Australia, we run with food standards. So, similar governing body like the German people have the E-Commission up in Canada, they have Health Canada, so different large organizations are going to cover a lot of different material. And underneath this particular component here, you have what's called the TGA, the Therapeutic Goods Act. So thanks for doing that. So somewhere down the road, the TGA determines, what's the process of this? Can I get it in my system? How comfortable I am consuming it? What's the real history behind some of these particular products? So we'll cover a lot. I'll talk to you about general sugar. I'll talk to you about fruit sugar. High fructose corn syrup, sugar alcohols. What the heck are sugar alcohols? Splenda, Equal, Sweet and Low, Saccharin, different products that are all out there. Whether it's you, your friend, your sister, your mother, your cousin, your client, who's ever doing it, we'll gather a whole lot of information about it. And again, take a deep breath. I'm very sincere that you're here, and take your time. So let's talk about a couple things of really what's going to go on here. And in the States, for what it's worth, because the States is a fairly large component here, and we use what's called the Food and Drug Administration. And let me share this with you about the FDA. Potentially the same or maybe a bit different than the food standards in Australia. But in the FDA, it is a very, very, very powerful and political organization. Often, like the President of the United States, he or she who has the most money wins. So the FDA is a very politically controlled organization. And what they're going to do is they're going to determine these food additives that must be particularly approved. And there's over 6,000 things that go into products. Cookies, candies, cakes, ice creams, bonbons, Ho-Hos, Twinkies, you name it. Junk food, good food, everything that's out there where they're going to determine, is this stuff okay? Can I put this stuff in a particular product? And we got to test it. We got to determine, is this stuff really safe? Now, on the downside in the States, which is the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, after all this testing, think about this for a second. 6,000 different products that have some type of sugar in it, or emulsifier, or bleacher, or acid, something goes in here. And 6,000 plus products, they're going to come up with a decision for us as citizens to determine, hey, I want to take it or I don't want to take it. And here's what they come up with right here. This word is called GRAS, Generally Recognized as Safe. Wow. Could you be a little more thorough for me, man? I'm going to take some stuff and put it in me that you tested on rats and mice and all sorts of individuals, and you're going to tell me it's generally recognized as safe. That's a warm, fuzzy feeling. That makes me feel real good. Generally recognized as safe. When you talk about here, over in Australia, you use what's called food standards. Now, you jumped on the game a little quicker than the American did, for what it's worth. We determined a system called the DSHEA Act, Dietary Supplement Health Education Act of 1994. And somewhere in about 89, you determined that a bunch of products, and tomorrow, or a little bit later when I do some stuff on supplements, you'll be able to really determine things that have herbs and vitamins and minerals and supplements. How do we sell these particular products? Well, this is what we're going to deem as them as safe. And maybe somewhere under that umbrella it's going to be the same thing, generally recognized as safe. So somebody did some kind of testing on it. And again, in Germany, it's the E-Commission. In Canada, it's Health Canada. In the States, it's the FDA. Here, it's called food standards. So somebody took a look at all these products. My mission is to not to really tell you what to do. I'm going to leave that up to you. But what I did do is I did my homework. I did a lot of studies. Studies are time-consuming, expensive, large number of subjects. This way, you'll really be able to tell, hey, what's this product? How does it metabolize in my system? Does it get in me? Is it healthy? How is it excreted? What's the real story? And again, all sorts of products that we all use every particular day under the general umbrella of sugar. So let's take a peek. When the FDA and when big organizations test on particular stuff, let's just talk about Equal or Sweet and Low or Splenda, a little packet we put in our coffee or our tea. They're going to make some decisions here and they're going to determine, listen, let me test this stuff out and determine what the real story is. Let's look and see if this product is toxic. Is a single dose of this little Sweet and Low, Splenda, Equal, is this stuff going to kill me? Also, let's test for what's called chronic toxicity. Is long-term, is this stuff poisonous? Does it cause mutations? Is it carcinogenic? Is it cancer-causing? Let's take a real look at this and really determine how good this particular product is. What about reproductive safety? Well, what do we test on? Rats and mice, for what it's worth. I guess it's kind of okay, we'll test my shampoo on rats and mice, but do I want to test my food on rats and mice? And reproductive safety, were they born with 5 heads, 16 toes, 12 legs, 5 arms? What's the real deal behind this particular product? Another thing they test on also is called pharmacokinetic safety. Lip gloss, chapstick, things we all use. Cherry flavored, vanilla flavored, berry flavored, orange flavored. Somehow that's either a sugar or an artificial sweetener. How's it metabolized in our system? How comfortable are we consuming it? What really happens when we put this down? So here again, the Food and Drug Administration, maybe like Food Standards, maybe like Health Canada, maybe like the Germany E-Commission, comes up with a scenario after they test these particular products and they come up with generally recognized as safe. Not a hell of a lot better to give you than that, but generally recognized as safe. So we as consumers got to make some decisions. Hopefully I'll be able to make that decision for you a little bit easier when you come up with some facts. Now, when you look at testing, who are they testing on? These boys right here. Rats and mice. You know what they have? 1/10,000th of the DNA that you and I have. 1/10,000th. Is that a good test subject to test on really rats and mice? And we're talking about some particular foods. There are some studies on humans, but they're short-term. Here's why studies everywhere worldwide are short-term. Time-consuming, expensive, large number of subjects. How many organizations spend a lot of money, time-consuming, expensive, large number of subjects? Not many. So there's short-term reliance on human studies, a lot of animal studies, and again, 1/10,000th of the DNA that you and I have. So when they're looking at Equal and Splenda and sucralose and high fructose corn syrup and all the things we consume, here's our test subjects right here. Are there potential flaws? Yes. When we talk about the little pink packet, for what it's worth, Sweet and Low. We've all probably had Sweet and Low. It's in food. We use it in coffee and sugar. Way back when, in the 70s, there was a cancer scare. And on the little pink packet that's out there now, the little Sweet and Low packet, it used to have a warning label like cigarettes do. That said, use of this product caused laboratory cancer, or caused cancer in laboratory rats. And it did. It caused bladder cancer in female pregnant rats. Now the product's been retooled. It's been redone. The warning label's been lifted. So when you use Sweet and Low, there's no warning label on it anymore. Who redid it? I don't know. The warning label's gone. Now it's referred to as generally recognized as safe. So we've got to figure out what's the product, is it really healthy for us to do. Today it's explosive with the internet. All sorts of stuff is out there on the internet. When you look at something like aspartame, or Equal to you and I, which is all out there, look at this. Data overload, over 150 studies alone, just on one particular product. And before you determine which one you think is right, wrong, or indifferent, this is the key about any particular study. Consider the source. Who told me this information? Was it my sister's friend's mother's cousin down the road? They went on a diet and it worked? Or was it research-based? Was it journals? Was it done with rats and mice? Was there a lot of people involved? Was it double-blind studies? Did all the people exercise? Did all the people eat the same amount of food? So consider the source. A lot of times we read everything, and it has 3 amazing words in every ad we see. Results not typical. Of course, in conjunction with exercise, 2,000-calorie diet, exercise twice a day, etc., etc. So think about what you're looking at, but understand the testing mode of all the products. Think about what we're going to talk about, these particular items, and normally they're going to be referred to as generally recognized as safe, especially in the States. And the things we have motor all over the world. They get to all different origins, but here at least you're governed by food standards. We're governed by the FDA. So somehow there could be some disputing issues. Some things might be good to use here. Other things are not good in certain other portions of the world. Now, the FDA, like the food standards, makes a statement. And what they really make a statement is, listen, you and I as consumers, we can safely enjoy a range of nutritive and non-nutritive sweeteners. What's a nutritive sweetener? Something elicits an insulin response, like sugar. In response to consuming sugar, your pancreas secretes insulin in response to a carbohydrate feeding. Something that's non-nutritive are artificial sweeteners. We know them as Splenda, Sweet and Low, Equal, Sulfame K, all these different products. They do not elicit an insulin response. And many organizations say, hey, listen, this is our statement. It's all okay. But there's a whole lot of organizations, and here's one, that might disagree with what that particular statement is. Now, all over the world, this is a pretty good, strong organization right here, the Center for Science and the Public Interest. It's a lobbyist group, and here's what they have. Money. And when you have some money, you have some power. They do research. They check things out on humans, and they're determining, listen, there's a lot of products that are all over the world that are carcinogenic and cancer-causing. Really think about this before you pump it in. And here's what goes on in this land and every land. Profit. And profit's not a dirty word. Greed could be. Let's not kill people. It's okay to make $1. But let's really take a look at what the product's all about. So a lot of organizational study, a lot of people agree and disagree. There's countless organizations that will agree what food standards say and countless organizations that will disagree with what food standards say, like the FDA, like the E-Commission, like everywhere else. Yes, ma'am?
Where does the CSPI get its money from?
CSPI is publicly funded. So Center of Science and the Public Interest, publicly funded lobbyist group. Now they'll raise money through different other organizations, but they do find ways to raise some dollars.
So there would be ways of other companies putting money into that?
Could be. There's ways that they fund, because it's always give to somebody to gather some dollars. It's a great question where they get money, although they're publicly funded. Through fund drives, through fundraisers, through various different components. But this is a group for sure that's well known. And they really let the FDA and bigger organizations go, whoa, look deep into what you're testing. Stop with rats and mice, look at human studies. Let's really talk about what's going in our systems, because it's a matter of your health. So what I did just going into this is said, listen, let's take a look at sugar. Let's take a look at fruit sugar. sugar alcohol, sweet and low, agave, Splenda, everything we do. And let's kind of determine really what we're talking about. And this is sucralose. Let's start with this very simple one. And when you read a label and it says sugar, that's sucralose, or sugar on any particular label. And 50 years ago, give or take, here in this land, in America and Canada, about 85% of all the sugars we ever consumed was known as sucrose, about 85%. And today there's so many other options, so there's lots of different routes to take a look at. But this was a really popular piece. And if you went to eat somewhere, or you went into a restaurant, and we had a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, there was a little silver canister with a little metal lid, and it had a little hole in it, and you took it and you poured your sugar into your coffee or into your tea 50 years ago. And today with Equal and Splenda and sucralose and high fructose corn syrup and all these other options, there's so many other options to look at. Well, what's plain table sugar, okay? Cane sugar, table sugar, simple sugar, about 4 calories to the gram. We look at it as like this white substance, which had to be refined to become white. At one point it was yellow. At one point it was pink. It eventually becomes to a white product. And what does it do? It adds some color when you bake with it. It crispens, it hardens. You can make cookies, candies, cakes, ice creams. You can make a lot of good stuff when you talk about sugar. So none of these yummy things can be made unless we had some particular sugar. So again, what is sugar? It's refined. It's abundantly cheap. At some point it was a bit more expensive, but it's very cheap. Grown like crazy all over the world, especially in the central part of the United States. Awesome, awesome amounts of sugar grown in Florida and in central portions of the United States. Just a very easy, simple product to grow, and it's in everything. But if you think about it, 85% of it about 50 years ago is what we used. Now, what's the real deal when you talk about some health issues? First and foremost, for sure, is tooth decay. 100%. Okay? Now, tooth decay is multifactorial. Hey, how good did I brush my teeth? Hey, how many times did I gargle and wash my teeth? And how good did I really take care of my mouth? Also, in the percentage of carbohydrates that we consume. If my plate was 50% carbohydrates, was 49% sugar? What percentage of sugar did I really put in? So tooth decay is certainly multifactorial. Here's another interesting thing, too. Today in our world, we all drink bottled water. Someone would have told us 40, 50 years ago we were going to find some water, put it in plastic bottles and sell it. We would have said, not a chance. But when we were kids, especially growing up all over the world, we picked up a garden hose and we drank water. And you know what it had? Fluoride. Bottled water has no fluoride. So bottled water is referred to as reverse osmosis. You take minerals out when sometimes you want minerals in. But it's quick, it's convenient, and it's a lot of things that we do. So for what it's worth right here, sugar is certainly multifactorial. Now, sugar on teeth encourages bacteria and plaque unquestionably, and sugarless gum does help. And when you look at sugarless gum or these sugar alcohol components, something like this xylitol is a pretty good thing. It's a wood alcohol. It's in a lot of gum. It's in Dentyne, it's in Trident, it's in most of your sugar-free type of gums. What does it do? It kind of prevents the oral bacteria because sugar on teeth encourages gingivitis, encourages tooth decay. Here's a cool thing, you know. If you took a tooth out of your mouth, when we were little kids, I guess we used to put it under our pillow, and I guess if we got a quarter, today it must cost you about $5 if you have a bunch of little kids. But take a tooth out for what it's worth and put it in a can of soda, a can of Coca-Cola, and within a few days, that tooth will completely dissolve, 100%. All the acids and the sugar and the soda actually ate up the enamel and the calcium. Guess what your bones are made of, too? Calcium. Guess what your teeth are made of? Calcium. So very, very strong, potent stuff. So sugarless gum certainly can help promote or de-promote some type of tooth decay. And again, xylitol helps inhibit some type of oral bacteria. So first and foremost with sugar, definitely about your teeth. The other thing, too, is does sugar tie into obesity? You know it might. Because in the States, boy, we're extremely wealthy, but we're also the heaviest people probably on the planet. The obesity record in the States is absolutely astronomical. And that ties into a few other things that's gone global. Super size, double size, triple size, mega size, bucket of fries. I mean, it's crazy, the amount of foods, especially in sunny South Florida where I am. Life's about where am I going to play some golf and where am I going to play some tennis and where am I going to go eat. Portion sizes are astronomically big. So volume, volume, volume. But when you talk about obesity, does sugar tie into obesity? It could. And what I like to do is do my homework. And when I look at studies, remember, time-consuming, expensive, large number of subjects. Well, here's one right here, the Nurses' Health Study. That's 39,000 people. That's a pretty good study. And what they come up with, they said, listen, empty calorie eating patterns is a predictor of weight gain. What is an empty calorie eating pattern? Well, junk food that you and I know. Cookies, candies, cakes, ice creams, bonbons, ho-hos, all the things we eat. And life's worth living. Go enjoy weekends, holidays, weddings, parties. Go have a good time. In your life, there's use, abuse, and misuse. Use your bodies. Misuse your bodies. I love happy hour. I go all the time. It's great. Just don't misuse or abuse. When you have abuse, you have consequences. So when you talk about this amount here, empty calorie eating patterns is a predictor of weight gain, that's a pretty good amount of study. And what you got here is sugar is a piece of the obesity problem, but not the whole problem. Where's the big problem? Supersize, double size, triple size, mega size, calories in, calories out. And sugar elicits an insulin response. That's because we eat it and it tastes good. Commercial when we were children, whether it's here or in the States or anywhere. Snickers is satisfying. Yeah, it has sugar. It tastes good. Ice cream has sugar. Yeah, it tastes good. Breyers is satisfying. It's all good. So does it have a predictor of weight gain? Well, empty calorie eating patterns, food with low nutrient dense foods, lots of calories, lots of fat, lots of sugar, definitely do tie in with a little bit of an obesity problem. Other health issues, diets that are very high in plain old table sugar, okay, might raise your risk of high blood pressure, okay, leading to metabolic syndrome, coronary artery disease, hypertension, diabetes. So again, diets that are very high. Does sugar tie into this one here, depression and addiction? It might. It might. Because carbohydrates, for what it's worth, we all eat a ton of carbs, they increase serotonin. Serotonin is a chemical in your brain. It's the feel-good. It's the pleasure factor. When you eat something, your body secretes this serotonin through the adrenal gland, and yummy, yummy, yummy. And it feels great. And when we eat desserts and cookies and candies and cakes and ice creams and carbohydrates secrete this serotonin, it feels good. And here's kind of the cycle of what goes on for what it's worth. Here I am, I'm hungry. I don't know, do we have Ben & Jerry's here? We do. So we got some great Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and I'm about to sit down and eat my Chunky Monkey ice cream or my New York Super Chunky Fudge with a tablespoon, not a teaspoon. I'm going in head first. And as I sit and consume that pint, because it tastes good and carbohydrates secrete serotonin and I'm feeling really good and it's yummy and I love it, and the whole sugar rush and the sugar high, I'm starting to chow down. A silly American phrase, but for what it's worth, I'm eating. And I start feeling pretty good 20, 30 minutes into that. And I'm not sure I really feel guilty, but you know what I do when I scrape the bottom of that with my tablespoon and just realize I ate about 600 calories and about 45 grams of fat? I want to shoot myself is what I want to do. But you kind of say, wow, what did I just do? So there's a little bit of guilt deprivation after consuming something that tastes so good. And you know what happens again, why this is a vicious, redundant cycle? Because food is a coping mechanism, period. Food's a coping mechanism. We're supposed to eat for biological reasons. You drive your car, you got to put gasoline in your car. It won't go anywhere unless you put gasoline in your car. But do we really eat for biological reasons, food for survival? We do. We also eat for social reasons. We go out all the time. Anything social, as soon as you sit down with someone, let's get something to eat. Social reasons, emotional reasons, and cultural reasons. So there's lots of different reasons why we consume. And this vicious, redundant cycle happens over and over. I started feeling pretty good. Why? Because carbohydrates secrete serotonin in the brain. Makes me feel really good. A little bit of guilt deprivation as I scrape the bottom of that bowl and realized I ate about 500 calories and 45 grams of fat and say, wow, what did I just do? So this vicious, redundant cycle maybe can tie in with sugar, maybe about addiction, maybe about depression. Does sugar tie into obesity? It certainly can. Nurses' Health Study, 39,000 people told you so. Does sugar tie in with some tooth decay? It could, but it's all about oral bacteria, oral hygiene. What it definitely does do as far as sugar, it's going to raise your triglycerides, which is fat in the bloodstream, and it's going to raise your LDLs, your poor cholesterol. Alarmingly, maybe. Depends on the quantity you consume. And again, in your carbohydrate intake, how much percentage of your carbs was plain old table sugar? So go back 50 years ago, this was 85% of the sugar we consume. Plain old white table sugar. 4 calories to the gram. Cook with it, bake with it, hardens, crispens, does all sorts of good stuff. So, little bit about sugar. Let's flip over to fructose. What is fructose? Well, it's the sugar in fruit and the sugar in honey. And it's very, very, very sweet. Sweeter than plain old table sugar or sweeter than plain old sucrose. Now, what fruit does, it contains fiber. And fiber is good for you in more ways than one. Keeps you regular in more ways than one. But fruit, like this apple right here, definitely has some sugar, this fructose, but it has fiber, water, and antioxidants. So all sorts of good stuff. Yes, there's some sugar, but fiber, water, and antioxidants. So it actually slows down the metabolic tract in absorption. And the absorption which takes place in your small intestine of vitamins, minerals, nutrients, and macronutrients. So again, some sugar for sure. But again, slower in its absorption, slower in its metabolic rate. Very sweet, but the plain old table sugar didn't have fiber, water, or antioxidants. This does. So a much better tool when you talk about fruit sugars. When you look at this type of fructose, crystalline fructose, this is not the greatest. Kind of a man-made funky thing, not the best thing at all. And again, this is one of those products that's in a lot of other products. You eat with your eyes. We've used stuff that might be yogurt or a lot of healthy-looking products, and they're packaged beautifully and low-fat and light and all these wonderful things. But the truth is, sometimes there's some crystalline fructose, not the greatest thing. And your body really doesn't always know how to metabolize that or absorb it. Again, raising the triglycerides and the LDLs in your system. So, very different types of fructose right here, fruit sugar and honey, and this type of crystalline fructose here. Same thing, 4 calories to the gram in the crystallized or the syrup type of form. And this type of sugar ferments, so we can have wine at 6:30 down at the bar. It's happy hour, it's all good. So wine's not a bad thing, again, done with fructose, and that's kind of how this particular product works. Now, when you look at fructose, it's a lower glycemic index than plain old table sugar. And what the glycemic index is, it's something that's been around since the 50s. And it's the speed at which sugar enters your bloodstream. Certain times after we exercise, we want a very high glycemic index, something that gets into our system super quick to replenish glucose and glycogen and all the things that we need to consume. And again, this is fairly slow. When you look at these particular sugars, and the glycemic index, this plain old table sugar right here, is about 100. So the speed at which sugar enters your bloodstream. And when you look at fructose, much slower. Much lower, again, absorbed in the small intestines, very slow, much slower than plain old table sugar. Refined again from cornstarch, and what's grown everywhere? Corn. So it's a very simple, easy way to get some dextrose and create some simple fruit sugars. Now, is there health issues? Could be. Now, if you're fit and active, you clear sugars right away. Let me share that again. If you're fit and active, you really clear sugars right away. Someone who might be obese, someone with a bigger BMI, somebody who's consuming a whole lot of sugar because it's healthy, and I'm going to go on my diet and eat a lot of sugar. And remember, the first 3 letters of diet are die, D-I-E, so be careful about what you consume. But the truth is here, this stuff gets converted to what's called fatty acids at a very, very fast pace. This type of sugar converts to fatty acids, which is fat in the bloodstream, raising triglycerides, raising LDLs at a very quick pace. So high quantities of fruit, maybe is that some of the reasons we're getting a bit bigger? Maybe. But if you're fit and active, you clear them quite nicely. If you're not fit and active, this gets converted to fatty acids. Again, fat into the bloodstream at a very, very, very fast rate. So calories in, calories out. Yes, ma'am?
What do you define active as?
Say that again?
What do you define active as?
Active as somebody who has what's called healthy weight achievement. Someone who has a normal BMI, someone who's within a particular range. Someone who's involved in what's called ADLs, activities of daily living. We exercise, we train clients, we exercise, and whether they're with us for an hour or 2 or 3 or 5 hours a week, 168 hours in a week, 24 hours in a day, what do they do outside of us? We're engaged in heart rate right now, we're engaged in conversation, here's my heart rate. What do they do that elevates that heart rate? Hop, skip, walk, jump. What do they do outside of us? That would be fit and active. Someone who comes in not clinically obese, not obese, someone with a stable BMI, relatively healthy. So under that general umbrella, you clear sugars fairly quick. A lot of individuals, the reason I share this, why we continue to get a little bigger, is because when we diet or we look at calorie intake, we often view fruit as healthy, and it definitely is. But large quantities will convert to fatty acids. So thermodynamically, exercise phys-wide or exercise component, it converts to a fatty acid at a very fast rate, unlike sugar. So this converts pretty quickly. The good side, again, water, fiber, antioxidants, very good. Now when you think about fruits, there's very different glycemic indexes in fruit. When you look at a fruit that's predominantly water-based, like cantaloupe and honeydew, lower calories, lots of water, gets in your system, it's absorbed nice and easy. When you look at certain fruits that are very sugar-based, raisins, dates, things like that, high density, higher calories, smaller quantity, again, much higher glycemic index, the speed at which sugar enters your bloodstream. So fruit in general is certainly a good thing. Just take a look at the caloric intake and understand, what's this about? This type of fructose here, this sugar fruit, converts to fat at a much quicker ratio than plain old table sugar. Yes, ma'am?
So with obese people, would you avoid giving them fruit in the initial diet to try and bring their weight?
Okay, question is, with obese people, would I avoid trying to give them fruit in their particular diet? Great question. Everybody's body is different. We all convert and metabolize foods substantially different. Without looking at a health history form and understanding who my client is or my patient, I'm shooting from the hip from you. But what I would do is, if I'm working with someone who's looking for healthy weight achievement or weight loss in general, I would look at the serving sizes that I give in fruit. Each serving size is 60 calories, 15 grams of carbs. I might cut back a little bit on someone who's trying to lose a few pounds for what it's worth. I'd make sure the energy expenditure, the exercise, is higher. The caloric intake is slightly lower, and in that caloric intake, maybe a little bit less sugar. But what I would do is look at the ones that are a lower glycemic. If it's water-based, cantaloupe, honeydew, watermelon, things like that, as opposed to apricots, raisins, dates, very dry, very dense, lots of calories, super high glycemic. But health issue-wise, though, it converts to a fatty acid very rapidly. So there's a difference between this one and plain old table sugar in the conversion process. Just a little bit about some health issues. When you look at also fructose, too much of this stuff does not absorb. When you give your little child or your niece or your nephew or your friend too much soda or too much apple juice, they run to the bathroom. It goes right through you. So there might be some issues about some type of malabsorption. Like plain old table sugar, diets that are very high in fructose, dietary intake that's very high, will increase triglycerides, fat in your bloodstream, and increase your LDLs, your low-density lipids, your poor cholesterol. So those are some health issues. Again, use, abuse, misuse. Have some fun. Just too much, too fast, too soon leads to some problems. So this, unlike table sugar, will convert to fatty acids at a very, very, very alarming rate if too much is consumed. High fructose corn syrup. What is this thing? What is high fructose corn syrup? Here's what I will tell you. It's in everything under the sun. Lots and lots and lots of foods. Somewhere in about 1970, the Chinese invented this particular product. Certainly we as Americans and all across the land, we bought into this. Why? Because profit's not a dirty word. And what it is, it's a liquid sweetener. It's super thin. It's super powerful. It's super sweet. And it mixes into cookies, candies, cakes, ice cream, sodas, really easy. So when it mixes super easy, we have to use less of it. When we use less of it, profit margins raise. So products like in the States, Kraft Food, General Foods, all these big food organizations, use a lot of high fructose corn syrup. And what is it? It's made from corn. And where do we grow corn? Everywhere. And it's super cheap. And it's super abundant, and it's in a lot of stuff. When you take this dextrose, or this corn sugar, and you mix it with fructose and glucose, you develop this enzymatic process of this very thin, supercharged, high fructose corn syrup. An example we all can relate to is soda. Diet soda, regular soda. We go out to a restaurant, I'd like to have a soda, please, and you get a nice big one for a couple dollars, and they'll refill it all day long with that little soda gun. Just like when you're at the bar and you order yourself a drink and they use that soda gun. Those sodas, again, and lots of other fluids. High fructose corn syrup. Now, what you normally might see on a package is this. When you look at a liquid drink like High C, is a fruit-sweetened drink geared towards kids. Hawaiian Punch, a lot of particular products, they'll say HFCS, high fructose corn syrup 55. That's a very common thing you'll see on a food label. What is it? Well, it's 55% fructose and about 45% glucose. And again, super thin, supercharged, real easy. Now, fast foods use lots of high fructose corn syrup. And fast foods that are low nutrient dense foods, dessert foods, cookies, candies, cakes, ice creams, not about never do, but very easy, mixes in a lot of foods. You eat with your eyes, packaging is all out there. And when you look at it, again, it's a very sweet product. Now, it's made from corn, so it's very inexpensive. And again, profit not a dirty word at all. Widely used. And when I share with you it's in everything, it's in everything. Things you'd have no idea that have high fructose corn syrup. You put your glasses on and go, whoa, it's got a lot of high fructose corn syrup in it. Yes, ma'am?
So is it as much, it's prevalent in Australia as it is in the US?
Well,
last year it wasn't really accepted into the country.
Here you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, great question. Is it as prevalent in Australia as it is in the US? Probably not. In the US, because we grow a lot of corn and we purchased it as the Americans from the Chinese, and we are probably the junk food capital of the world, it's extremely prevalent. Has it made its tracks globally? You bet. Is it in products that you would view as particularly healthy and then take a look and go, whoa, oh my God, it's in this stuff? It's definitely in there. So here's a good example. In 1970, look how much the usage increased in 40 years. How's 4,000% for you? You think it's in some products? It really is. Here's an excellent example of high fructose corn syrup. We all know soda. We all understand soda. When I was a child and we went to the supermarket or shopping somewhere, and we'd go down the soda aisle, and there was Coke and Pepsi and root beer and Orange Crush and Dr. Pepper and 7-Up, a handful of sodas. Well, when you take a look today, it got a little bigger. Who taps in a high fructose corn syrup? Gatorade, Powerade, sports drinks, all loaded with lots of high fructose corn syrup. So the volume is extremely high. I'm not here to beat up Coke, but let's take a look at what Coke is. If you really take a look, we got some carbonated water, and by law, you have to put ingredients in from most to least. What's the second ingredient? High fructose corn syrup, the supercharged, super thin, strong, syrupy type of sugar. Sucrose, plain old white table sugar. Then we're going to add some water, some caramel color, some phosphoric acid. I'll back up and tell you about that in a second. Artificial flavor. What's an artificial flavor? Generally recognized as safe is what an artificial flavor is. First thing they all talked about. And some caffeine so we can run around the house a few times at 130 calories and 8 ounces. Not the best tool. When you think of stuff with phosphoric acid, and again, the reason I use soda is because we all can relate, whether it's diet soda or plain old soda. Phosphoric acid, although you might read things and see things on the internet, phosphoric acid bleaches my bones. It doesn't necessarily bleach your bones, but what it does do is it leaches calcium from your bones. And you have absolutely no idea you're losing calcium because you urinate it out. Until some point down the road, you do a bone density test and say, what happened here? Why is my bone density so low? Well, maybe lack of exercise, but certainly foods with some phosphoric acid. There's 206 bones in your body. There's 430 voluntary muscles. You've got to take care of them. Super important, especially for women. Low bone density, osteopenia, osteoporosis, wider Q angle, built for lactation, built for pregnancy. Roughly 5 years post-menopause, give or take, there's about 8 to 10% bone loss naturally in females. Calcium, magnesium, iron, all these things have to go up. And I'll share a lot of that in the next bunch of sessions that I do. But just to give you an idea, again, when you talk about some high fructose corn syrup, very strong, super powerful, supercharged. Now, has it led us to this, to some obesity issues? Maybe. Are we children of the corn in America and all the world? Yeah, we sure are. Because again, fast food, very abundant, very cheap, lots of high fructose corn syrup. There's some mineral deficiency with high quantities of this. Long-term mineral deficiency, magnesium, chromium, copper. I mean, these are things that you certainly need, these nutrients and these macronutrients, to keep your blood sugars level. Instead of fluctuating, you're looking for some general regulation across the board. Can it lead to fragility, anemia, inability to control blood sugars, or diabetes? It might. Again, look at numbers, especially in the States for what it's worth. The average American or the average individual consumed about 35 pounds of this a year 30 years ago. Look what happened when 2000 hit. We went to 80 pounds, and look at now. Do about 100 pounds. So it's in a lot of foods for what it's worth. Very strong, super abundant, simple corn, glucose, sucrose, easy, supercharged, very thin. Yes, ma'am?
So you're saying HFCS reduced your chromium level?
It could reduce your chromium, magnesium, it lead to inabilities to control blood sugar.
So if you take tablets that increase your chromium level, does that stop you then craving that sugar?
What happens, well, sugar cravings are from omega-3s. The omega-3s that we consume in our diet might help control some sugar cravings for what it's worth. Note to all women, please, for what it's worth. Yeah.
Chromium has been provided as sugar stability.
It can. What chromium picolinate actually does is when your body's in a very low carbohydrate environment, preparation for a show, going to compete, when your body's super low on carbs, it helps push insulin into cells. So your sugar levels aren't all over the place. But when you're looking at anything supplementation, go into that route and just say what's supplementation in addition to or in replace of. Food first, supplement second. So does this lead to it? Yeah, use, abuse, misuse, too much. This is a great question because one thing never, ever, ever lies in your life. It's a blood test. You take a blood test, take a look at what complete blood work is, fibrinogen, homocysteine, cholesterol, triglycerides. We do a great job on the outside. Amazing job on the outside. Women are incredible. I love you to death. You've got hair dryers, makeup, and we're pretty as can be. I don't own a comb. I did the best I could, but I matched my tie to my shirt to my socks. I got dressed. This is it. This is what we're going with. But what's going on inside? You got to take a look at blood. And think about everything you clean in your life. Your carpets, your walls, your tires. You do a grease and oil change in your car. How well do you take care of yourself inside? Externally, beautiful. We do a great job. We dress up real nice. We look real good. But internally is really where it's at. So loss of these things can be a problem. Now, this is a very prevalent thing in the States, and President Obama recognized this. And what he did is he said, listen, high fructose corn syrup is starting to show a little bit of levels of mercury. So we want to take a look at some of these mercury components and say, wait a minute, maybe we want to try to decrease this out of our dietary intake. So he created this House bill called 2065. Boy, I'm loud now, man. Hold on a second. That's better. Okay. 2065, maybe to reduce this high fructose corn syrup. Here's how your body recognizes these high fructose corn syrups, or I should say the inability to recognize it. It's not an amino acid. It's not an essential nor a non-essential amino acid. It's not a vitamin. It's not a mineral. It lacks these particular nutrients. So the body normally processes high fructose corn syrup as triglycerides, fat in your bloodstream. So again, use, abuse, misuse, not never do. Just think it's very prevalent. It's in a lot of foods. Definitely different than sugar, definitely different than fructose, high fructose corn syrup. Take a look at before, like I said, way back when sugar was super high in the components in the 70s, and look at the decrease in the use of sugar. And why? Because of the increase in artificial sweeteners and high fructose corn syrup. Look at these numbers. I mean, one just started out of nowhere and just continued to rise and rise and rise, while sugar consumption actually went down. Because 50 years ago, 85% of what we ate was sugar. Now there's so many other options. 50 years ago, we had Converse All-Stars. Now there's Nike, Adidas, Brooke, you name it. It's all sorts of options of what we have today. So what's the deal with honey? Got some sugar, got some fruit sugar, you got some high fructose corn syrup. Honey's good. Honey has probiotics in it. Honey is an antioxidant. Instead of plain old table sugar, again, that has about 16 calories in a teaspoon, this has 22. Big deal. But just for the sake of dietary consumption, think about honey for a quick second. The one great thing we do with honey is teaspoons and tablespoons. We're not doing it in tremendous large quantities. It's not in too many packaged goods, and if it is, it's normally in very small quantities. This isn't like high fructose corn syrup. This isn't like fructose. This isn't like sucrose in very, very big numbers. This is relatively small. So when you look at the numbers here, let's just determine what it is. It's 48% fructose, it's 41% glucose, it's 9% sugar, and a trace element of water. When I add 41 and 9, I got 50%, and I add 48, I have 98% of some kind of sugar. That's what it is, with a tad bit of water. When I share with you that honey is similar to synthetically produced sugar syrups, remember these numbers, 48% fructose, 41% glucose. And when I backtrack a little bit and you look at high fructose corn syrup, 48 and 41, it's not too far from this. Again, this is done in very large quantities. This honey is done in very small quantities, teaspoons, tablespoons. But for what it's worth, I share that with you. Antioxidant. The way you find honey, it's graded in 7 different ways. Number 1 to number 7. Lily white in color is a number 1. Dark, dark amber, like a molasses-looking color, is a 7. The darker the honey, the more antioxidants. Go dark. Certainly going to help you. It's extremely low glycemic. It's shelf stable. You get some honey, it can stay on your shelf for a long time. It doesn't go rancid. It doesn't go bad. Again, it stays for a very, very, very long window of time. Now, is there some health issues? Like I said, 22 calories to a teaspoon, no big deal, compared to 16 like plain old table sugar. Not appropriate for little tiny infants. Your digestive tract, your enzymes, your small intestine takes about a year to develop. Honey for infants normally under a year might create some intestinal bacteria or botulinum. Not the best thing. So after about a year, perfectly safe for any little infants, children's, adults, no questions at all. Raw honey, if you're doing some raw honey, that's something that's not been heated under 120 degrees, uncooked, very, very raw. If you deal with some allergies, just maybe, like where I live, again, in sunny South Florida, it's in the tropics. It's a little bit of an allergy component. You live right on the ocean, so sometimes the allergies are a little bit higher. But because raw honey has some pollens, it might have some wax in it. And if there's little particles of wax, maybe, just maybe, it can increase your allergy sensitivity. But for the most case, certainly safe. So whether you do honey that's raw or you do honey that's processed, very healthy for what it's worth. And remember, although it's a lot of sugar, it's teaspoons and tablespoons. The quantities are much, much, much lower. So a little bit on table sugar, a little bit on fructose, a little bit on high fructose corn syrup, a little bit on honey. What are these things? What is sugar alcohols? Great name. Doesn't contain sugar, doesn't contain alcohol. Might have tried to call it a little bit something different, but somebody chose to call it sugar alcohol. What it is, it's a technical name. They're actually called polyols. And by law, things that are calorie-free or sugar-free mean that there's less than 15 calories to call it calorie-free. And if there's no sugar in it and it has an artificial sweetener in it, like sucrose or aspartame or sweet and low, it's considered a sugar-free product. So no sugar, no alcohol, but it's made from a carbohydrate. Again, an easy process to break down with no ethanol either, which is the sugar in beer. So a man-made type of substance, very easy to get and also extremely abundant. Pretty good component for what it's worth, especially people in a low carbohydrate environment. People who are diabetics, people who can't do a lot of sugar. This is a sugar substitute. It's incompletely absorbed in your system, so it's not metabolized all that well. So again, your body doesn't always recognize it as an amino acid, a mineral, a vitamin. Kind of goes in you and kind of comes right out you for what it's worth too. Now, it definitely can replace sugar for a low carbohydrate dieter or someone with diabetes. There's 13 sugar alcohols, but 5 of them are very common right down here. Maltitol, xylitol, sorbitol, lactitol, erythritol. Sugar-free products, sugar-free candies, cookies, cakes, ice cream, sugar out, sugar alcohols in. Same type of concept, okay? Let's read. Replaces sugar for low-carb dieters and diabetics. Very low calories, not a bad thing. No sudden rise in blood sugars like what sugar can do. The speed at which sugar gets into your bloodstream, very low glycemic. So it goes in super slow, easy to absorb, the minimal that you do absorb. No source of energy at all. So no dental issues. Why do we use sugar alcohols like xylitol and sugar-free gum? Because you take the sugar out, you put sugar alcohol and artificial sugar in for what it's worth. Now here's some examples. You find these products everywhere, here or all over the world. And when we look at something that's sugar alcohols, the 5 again that are common, sorbitol, mannitol, xylitol, lactitol, maltitol, 5 of the 13. They vary in sweetness compared to sugar. And again, for what it's worth, they don't always really taste quite like sugar either. And often what happens with a sugar alcohol, it gets added with another substance known as a sulfame K. And a sulfame K is a sweetening packet often used in Europe. And what a sulfame K does, we add it with a sugar alcohol, and it creates like a bulking or a cooling, a textured kind of flavor. When we eat Mentos, I just noticed there was a whole bag of Mentos over there. All right, when we eat these Mentos, I know there's some great commercials. The guy eats the Mentos, he goes out, he gets his date, and he goes, blows out this great peppermint cool sensation. That's because sugar alcohols, in conjunction with the sulfame K, creates that cooling, textured flavor. Dentine ice, Trident fire, the gums that give off peppermint and spearmint, these types of flavors, often a combination of sugar alcohol in conjunction with a sulfame K. When we eat Oreo cookies or some type of cookie and it has no sugar in it, again, it's going to be one of these 5 right here. When we do sugar-free ice cream, we take the sugar out, we put in one of these 5 particular sugar alcohols. When we do Lifesavers or Cream Savers, again, that cooling, bulking particular flavor gives it that breath of fresh air, that peppermint, that blueberry, that strawberry type of flavor. Now, what happens with these things is they're incompletely absorbed, so your body doesn't absorb them, means they go through you very, very, very quickly. So if you're going to be home and you have yourself some sugar-free, fat-free frozen yogurt, you're going to have one hot date with just you, because it's going to blow right through you very fast. You're going to be running full speed going, whoa, what happened here? This is sorbitol, mannitol. I got to go to the bathroom. Because your body doesn't digest it or absorb it. It's a laxative. So when you look at these particular laxatives, and at least the Food and Drug Administration in the States said, wait, warning, this stuff's going to blow right through you. These polyols cause some gas and some high-test gas for what it's worth, too. And the taste and texture, it's not really quite the same. When you have sugar-free, fat-free frozen yogurt or ice cream and you open it up, it doesn't melt like real sugar. It doesn't quite taste like real sugar either. But effective, low-carb dieters, diabetics, very safe for what it's worth. Warning, might blow through you a little bit. Warning, incomplete absorption. Certainly safe. But again, very low glycemic. And sometimes that's what it's about when you talk about sugar. You know, the speed at which sugar enters your bloodstream. Low glycemic, pretty good. Forgive me for being redundant. Fit and active, you clear sugars very well. Really well. What's fit and active? Activities of daily living. We exercise. What are we doing outside of that exercise? Is our body mass index okay? Are we looking for healthy weight achievement? Do we have obesity issues? Fit and active, you clear everything. So sucrose, plain old table sugar, fructose, high fructose corn syrup, honey, sugar alcohols. Let's look at these. These we love. These are non-nutritive sweeteners, meaning they don't elicit an insulin response. We consumed it and our carbohydrates, and we did not consume an increase in insulin response in response to eating this. Yes, sir?
Is there any study to back up what you just said, that because it has no sugar, it does not have glycemic responses, that equally it has no insulin response? For instance, I know that we measure the glycemic index of Coca-Cola, but not of diet.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there an insulin index?
Yes, when you're looking at something that's artificially made, like aspartame, like in Coca-Cola, or sucrose, or fructose, or some type of high fructose corn syrup, the insulin response isn't going to be high. What creates insulin in response to eating these carbohydrates is sugar. It's not sugar. So if there's, and then yes, there are studies for sure. The World Health Organization, New England Journal of Medicine, there's definitely studies that are there. If the response, here, I'll back up and let me show you something really quick. When you talk about these, let's look at, here you go, here's a glycemic index right here of erythritol. Okay? That's a sugar alcohol and the glycemic index is 0. These are super, super low compared to glucose or plain old table sugar. So if there is an insulin response, sometimes there's none. Otherwise, it's very, very, very low. Tiny numbers in the single digits is really not an insulin response.
So you're saying that the glycemic index has a direct relationship to the insulin response?
The glycemic index is the speed at which sugar enters your bloodstream. If I ate a bag of jelly beans, yes, my insulin response is going to be much higher because it's a higher glycemic index than something that's not. Now, based on that, too, the glycemic index isn't always the greatest tool to use, and here's why. A glycemic index of jelly beans is lower than carrots. That's telling me eat more jelly beans than carrots. Carrots have retinol and beta-carotene. Better source. Carrots are a 92. Jelly beans are a 70. So you got to look at the source for what it's worth. But yeah, they're very low in general, and yeah, there is a correlation based upon these artificial sweeteners here where there's no insulin release because it's not sugar. So tying sugar into the glycemic index versus these, again, and that's a great question, these are low, if not none. And the reason they might have some is because they're very minimal calories. 4 calories, 2 calories, so maybe there's a little bit of a tie-in on a glycemic index, but very, very low. Now, these are ones we all kind of know. Aspartame to you and I is equal, the little blue packet. Sucralose is yellow, is Splenda to you and I. Saccharin is pink, is Sweet and Low. Sunnet is a European product, or known as a sulfame K. And if you have some potassium issues, and I'll get into that later because it's an electrolyte, you got to be careful how much you do with that. And stevia is one that is not in this bracket. These top ones are all lab, L-A-B made, lab made, and stevia is plant-based. So again, one is from a plant, the other ones are not. Now, let's look at some numbers here for what it's worth. Here's aspartame, okay, and it's sold to you and I as equal. NutraSweet, Sugar Twin, these are brand name components, and an excellent question you shared before too, calorie-free sweeteners. So not going to elicit an insulin response, if anything, super, super low comparatively to sugar. So sold as equal, NutraSweet, Sugar Twin. Made of a couple amino acids, which is aspartic acid and phenylalanine. It's also made of methanol too, so when they break down in heat, this is what they become. 4 calories to the gram, but one thing to notice about equal, or aspartame, 200 times sweeter than plain old table sugar. 200 times. So very strong comparatively. Again, very low calorie, low glycemic, but 200 times sweeter. Now here's the history of this stuff going back in the States for what it's worth. The Food and Drug Administration approved this product for limited use only 30 years ago. So before 1981, your Diet Coke or your Diet Pepsi didn't have aspartame in it. It actually had saccharin, which is in Tab and a few other dietary sodas that are out there. And forgive me, I always try to use diet sodas because I think it's something we all can relate to, any portion of the world. 1996, in the States, it got approved as a general purpose sweetener. Now, in the Therapeutic Goods Act or under food standards of Australia, whether it got approved at that particular time, I'm not 100% sure. But when you look at it from the state standpoint, if you had something that was very limitedly used, then all of a sudden, 15 years later, it got approved as a general purpose sweetener, that means it went from a few products to lots and lots and lots of products. Cookies, candies, cakes, ice cream, sodas, etc., all across. Approved in over 100 countries, certainly one we're in here, and the States and Canada and Germany and lots of places in Europe. The Americas, meaning the Canadians and the Americans, they lead the world in usage. And look at that percentage comparatively. I mean, the Americas just consume this stuff in big, big, big numbers. And when you look at the products that it's in here, 6,000 different products. And like this product and many others, where does it fall under? Generally recognized as safe. Who did the studies? Was there research behind it? Rats, mice, etc., etc. Long-term duration, not a lot of stuff. So think about that going in. And look at the usage here. It's still extremely strong as far as product uses. Who owns another piece of the market? A few other products have a piece of the pie, but this one is still extremely, extremely strong as far as aspartame goes. Now these are assertions. We see these all over, especially with the power of the internet today. Somebody hates this product. And the Food and Drug Administration and the E-Commission in Germany and Health Canada and potentially food standards are much stronger than a handful of people who particularly hate a product. So let's jump in and really say, what's an assertion? Well, something that's stated with minimal support or minimal proof. A lot of people can talk a lot of stuff, but what's the proof behind it? And again, FDA and lots of big organizations, powerful political organizations, big dollars. It's hard to knock the champ out. When you do, then you're on top of the game. But until you take down the people making the laws, determining the adequate daily intake for us to consume, very, very different. So let's look at what this assertion is. Lots of individuals, lots of organizations, Center of Science for the Public Interest might be right. But this is a strong statement. It says, listen, aspartic acid causes numerous disorders. Methanol is toxic. Phenylalanine causes brain damage. It makes you think, wait, man, maybe I shouldn't be consuming this particular product. But again, forgive me for being redundant, let's consider the source. In this particular case, it's the FDA. It's as strong as you're going to get. And here's their feedback. Here's their punchline. This is what they're telling you. Listen, aspartame, which is equal to you and I, is metabolized to aspartic acid, methanol, and phenylalanine. So it's going to be broken down to aspartic acid, methanol, and phenylalanine. Aspartic acids in meats and milks and fruits and vegetables. And a matter of fact, a cup of milk has a lot more aspartic acid than a diet soda. If you're concerned about the equal, this is the FDA and powerful organizations telling you, if you're concerned about the equal and it breaks down to this toxic, poisonous stuff, maybe you shouldn't drink milk, because milk has a boatload more aspartic acid than the diet soda. Here's what else they tell you. Methanol. You're telling me methanol is a poisonous gas? Well, it's in milks and meats and fruits and vegetables. And it is. It's in all these particular products. Matter of fact, some tomato juice has about 6 times more methanol than your diet soda. Maybe you shouldn't drink tomato juice. So this is a big organization coming back at people who make these assertions. But there was a big problem that they created, and they didn't capitalize on it. And we as individuals learned from this mistake, and I'm going to share it with you. They also share with you this, phenylalanine, it's in all protein foods, and it certainly is. So when you look at the chemical of aspartame, methanol, aspartic acid, phenylalanine, that's what it breaks down to, they're saying it's in all these foods. You think it's a problem, don't drink milk, don't eat these proteins, don't do the tomato juice. Maybe there's a bigger issue. They also, CYB, they cover their butt. There's PKU in some sodas, and they're letting you know, well, PKU is an inherited disorder. It could lead to mental retardation. Maybe you shouldn't be consuming it, but like a pack of cigarettes, just like with soda, there's a warning label. It's letting you know right here. It's telling you. And actually, in the world, PKU, the percentages have gotten smaller. All newborns are screened for PKU everywhere. What used to be about a 1 in 10,000 chance for a newborn is about 1 in 15 or 14,000 now. So we got better in the process of screening. Here's where an issue and a component that was known as a mistake really changed the way we all view this particular product, or maybe it's a reason we should start to view this. When you look at aspartame, okay, that's equal to you and I. It breaks down to, again, a substance known as diketopiperazine in excess heat. So let's define what excess heat is. We're engaged in conversation. Our body temperature is about 98.6 Fahrenheit, give or take. Excess heat, what's excess heat? Higher than 98.6. Here again is an issue right here, and they're saying aspartame breaks down to diketopiperazine with excess heat. Toxicity levels can occur at greater than 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. What's 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight? A lot. A whole lot. Not going to get that in one diet soda. That's a very, very high quantity to consume. But again, consider the source. Food and Drug Administration, some big governing property. Here's the problem, and here's what's being shared. Aspartame breaks down to diketopiperazine in excess heat. This excess heat, this diketopiperazine, is toxic. They're letting you know it is toxic with this particular levels. Well, let's talk about diet soda real quick. How did it get to your kitchen, to your refrigerator? I'll tell you how. Got there on the back of a very, very big truck. I don't care where you live, but somewhere is August and July and warm months wherever you live, even if you live in Alaska. When you go into the back of a big food truck that's not refrigerated, carrying your soda, guaranteed the back of that big 18-foot wheeler driving down a highway in August somewhere is much hotter than 98.6 degrees. When the body starts to metabolize and you look at toxicity levels of 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, they're letting you know the product becomes toxic. But again, the adequate daily intake of 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is astronomically high. I said, what's 3,000 milligrams a kilogram of body weight a day? Well, I'm the 175-pound guy. And according to the Food and Drug Administration, for what it's worth, I can do 22 cans of soda each and every day to stay under my limit of 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight a day. Someone in here can relate to a 120-pound female. Either you're here or you know someone who is. And they're saying, you can do about 15 cans of soda not to exceed this particular amount. So that's a very high percentage. When I backtrack on here and I look, and here's some ads, just for what it's worth. A neurotoxin never tasted so good, caused death, anxiety, muscle spasms, vision loss. There's a lot of ads that really share aspartame's a problem. But again, toxicity levels, 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, that's a big number. Now, forgive me for using the FDA as an example one more time, but under the umbrella of the Food and Drug Administration in the States is another little group called the Joint Committee for Food Additives. And they make that number right there. And that number of 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is referred to what's called the ADI, the adequate daily intake. You can consume this much forever. No issues, no problems. That number was created in 1980, unchanged 31 years later. So that's a pretty strong number to look at. Control, control, control. A lot of power going on in there. So somehow you got to look at food standards, the commission, the German commission, the e-foods, Health Canada. Who's governing the thing and what are they sharing with us as far as numbers would go? So that's just really high. Here's what turned out with Equal. You can't bake with it. It's not heat stable. You'll have a hard time with NutraSweet making cookies, candies, cakes, all sorts of stuff. It's hard to make it because it's not heat stable. Why? It breaks down a diketopiperazine in heat. Who capitalized on this? Everybody. Sweet and Low, Splenda, you name it. And this one was right in the right place at the very right time. Sucralose, known as Splenda to you and me. Here's a little yellow packet. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, coffee too. It's something when you look at, though, this individual packet, and that's a great question, is only about 35 milligrams in a little sweetened packet. Say it again? It's only 10 per day then. If you did 10, you're at 35. Yeah, but that's a pretty big amount of caffeine. You'd be jittered out. But again, that amount there of 30,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is very high. The reason I did the math is I used soda as an example, and I said, how many can I consume? How much can someone who weighs 120? Here, there's 222 milligrams in a can of soda. Here's other foods we get all the time. 80 milligrams sugar-free frozen yogurt has about 80 milligrams. A frozen pop or a frozen piece of dessert, again, sweetened with aspartame, about 50. Cup of cereal. But that's telling you that 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, that's pretty high. Forget if the number's high, and I love the question. Here's the concern. Since 1980, that's been the number. We've gone through obesity, we've gone through all sorts of issues. The world has changed tremendously, yet the number hasn't changed. Control, 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 especially from the FDA standpoint. And I'm not here to beat up anybody as far as who governs our stuff. Just take a look and think about use, abuse, and misuse. It makes a big difference. They jumped on the bandwagon and did very, very well. Splenda became the yellow product. First thing it is heat stable. Sold as Splenda, approved in 1998 for what it's worth. Approved in 1998, heat stable. Now here's how you make this stuff. You take sugar out and you put chlorine in. Take sugar out of the molecule, put chlorine in. Well, is chlorine really bad? We all swallowed pool water. No one died. Chlorine's not too bad. It's excreted in our system. But the question is, how much chlorine you really want to consume? How much Splenda are we consuming on a regular basis? Is it in coffee and tea? It's small quantities for what it's worth. But when you really think about it, this was their little tagline. It said, made from sugar, tastes like sugar. That's because it once was sugar, but we took sugar out and we put chlorine in. Not absorbed, excreted through the body. Equal is 200 times sweeter than sugar. This one, 600. Now, who makes this product? Johnson & Johnson, the Band-Aid people out of America. We bought it from a company called Lyle & Tate, an English company, out of Europe. And if you had stock in this, you did very good. Because to date, this does about 43% of the average population for coffee and tea in the little individual packet. 43% of the market share they have. So they've done extremely, extremely well. But this is where everybody capitalized. You can bake with it, cook with it. It's heat stable. It doesn't break down to a chemical that's not metabolized in your system. Health issues? Maybe. It's got some chlorine. How much of this stuff you really want to drink? It's not absorbed. It's not toxic. It goes through our system. Food and Drug Administration approved. Health Canada approved. Food Standards approved. Germany E-Commission approved. And where does it all fall under, like in here, the Therapeutic Goods Act? Where does it all fall under in the states? The Dietary Supplement Health Education Act. So somewhere there's a governing body looking at it. Again, most products generally recognized as safe. Not a whole lot of substance behind it. It's in bleach for what it's worth, so just think about the next time you consume it. Saccharin is the pink stuff. Sweet and low. Over 100 years it's been around. Somewhere in the 70s, caused some cancer in laboratory rats. Used to be a little warning on it. There's no more little warning on it. They lifted it. It's been retooled. It's been redone. It's been repackaged. It's been remarketed. Here's your spokesperson right there. Pink Panther. Cool, man. Hey, it's all part of the game plan, how it works. The use has declined because in the 70s it had a huge cancer scare. And the issue here was it caused cancer or bladder cancer in female pregnant rats. And the question still remains, because it's overwhelmingly debatable, hey, how much did you feed these little rats that have 1/10,000th of the DNA that you and I have? Was it a teaspoon or was it a mountain? You know, how much did we really consume? So it's very debatable as far as it goes. But the product's heat stable. It doesn't break down to any type of diketopiperazine like Equal did. It wasn't heat stable. Here you can cook with it and bake with it. It's a simple product. It's sodium, nitrogen, and hydrogen. Sugar out, sodium, nitrogen, hydrogen in. Real easy. Hydrogen helps increase the pH, and the sodium's an electrolyte. Sodium, magnesium, potassium chloride, things we lose naturally anyway. So simple stuff for what it's worth. Instead of 200 times sweeter like Equal or 600 times sweeter like Splenda, this one's 300 times sweeter than plain old table sugar. So less is more for what it's worth. Again, some of the studies really showed big quantities were given to these rats and mice. Others showed not so much. So a very debatable product. How much do you want to consume? And when something had a cancer-causing agent in it and then it's been redone and remarketed and retooled, is it something you want to take a look at? Because again, consider the source. Who did the remarketing and the retooling? Who did the study? Time-consuming, expensive, large number of subjects. It's all okay within reason. Use, abuse, misuse. That's really what this comes down to, because a lot of things are very debatable. Here's another one too. This is Sulfame K as a packet, sold as Sunnet, mostly in European countries. And this is the stuff you add to the sugar alcohols to give it that bulking texture flavor. That Mentos and that Trident and the Dentine to give it that blueberry, strawberry kind of flavor. You mix the sugar alcohols in conjunction with the Sulfame K, and that's what gives it that bulking and texture flavor. 200 times sweeter than plain old table sugar, not absorbed, not metabolized, heat stable, approved in 1988 in some stuff, and now it's in a lot more other products. So this, again, is the one that's normally combined with these sugar alcohols. If you have some issues absorbing potassium, which is an electrolyte, you got to be a little careful here, because this will alter your body's natural chemistry to absorb something. You've kind of messed with Mother Nature a little bit. And sodium, magnesium, potassium, and chloride are electrolytes we all consume every day. And especially if we're exercising, those are things we lose. And especially if you're in a warm environment, again, those are things you lose in a little bit higher quantity. So if there's some potassium issues, caution. Now, the Center for Science and the Public Interest, like I mentioned before, a big lobbyist group, they hate this stuff. They absolutely hate this. They've spent some time and money. And that's kind of what I'm sharing with you. There's some time and money in some studies, and they say the stuff's carcinogenic, the stuff's poisonous. Let's be a little bit more cautious about what we're going to use, in some of these products. These two, for what it's worth, certainly have it. But again, use, abuse, misuse, lots of particular products have a lot of a Sulfame K in it. Now here's stevia. Relatively new in the States. Came under what's called the DSHEA Act, Dietary Supplement Health Education Act. Same thing here, the Therapeutic Goods Act. That allowed this product to be sold. Now, this is a good thing here, because what do we have here? You have a plant-based product instead of a lab-based product. All right? One's chlorine. We take the chlorine out, we put the sugar in. Or we take the sugar out, we put chlorine in. One is sodium, nitrogen, hydrogen. One, this diketopiperazine, methanol, phenylalanine, aspartic acid. At least here's a plant. Let's extract something from the plant, boil it, and turn it into a substance that's sweet. Used in Eastern Asia for decades. Eventually came over to other lands to be used in the DSHEA Act or Therapeutic Goods Act in small quantities, little packets. You can put it in your oatmeal, you can put it in your drink, you can sweeten your tea, you can put it in some food. It took till 2008, at least over in the States, for this to be generally approved. So what is it right here? It's a shrub. It's grown somewhere. We boil it. And when you boil it, you extract it. It's what's called Stevicida rubinea. There's different substances that we can create, different ways to extract it. Again, minimal calories, 200 times sweeter, and it's always been sold right here, Dietary Supplement Health Education Act in the States, and here under the Therapeutic Goods Act, 1989, and at some point they determined that it would be a product that we can use in a lot of other stuff. Here's some good stuff about this, though. Good studies that have showed here no cancer, no reproductive issues. 2008, the Food and Drug Administration in the States said, hey, this stuff's safe. It hasn't shown any carcinogenic problems. It hasn't shown any reproductive problems. No GI stuff. Lowers blood sugars, keeps gastrointestinal issues down. So not a bad thing. But think about this from a business standpoint. Let me back this up, and I want to show you something. When I used Equal or aspartame, look at this number right here of stevia. Very small percent of the market. 1%. You can't survive if you're only selling 1%. Now, how did this break out, or how will this start to break out? This is a pretty huge piece right here, because a couple of companies said, okay, we're going to buy into this. Those two companies are as big as you're ever going to find, Coke and Pepsi. Now the stuff got approved under the TGA. Now the stuff got approved under the Food and Drug Administration. And here's the particular products known as Truvia and Purevia. One's a Coke product, one's a Pepsi product. What is it? It's stevia. Again, done from a plant instead of done from a lab. So here's the first couple of products that got approved right here. Coke owns 7-Up or Sprite. So Sprite Green now, instead of being done with Equal, is done with stevia. Coke owns Odwalla, fitness drinks and fitness bars. Now Coca-Cola uses stevia instead of aspartame or another product to sweeten it. Coke owns vitamin water, glacier waters. So now these waters, again, done with stevia. Pepsi owns Sobe waters. So Pepsi uses stevia in their fitness water. Pepsi owns Tropicana. Tropicana orange juice, which was once fructose. Trop 50 is now some fructose and some stevia. So they lowered the sugar out and they put in a plant-based sugar. So these are the two products, Purevia right here and Truvia, Coke and Pepsi products, which are stevia. So it took till 2008 for this to be approved, and now what you'll start to see is this. This little 1% piece right here, that's going to grow in this decade. That's going to grow substantially. Approved product, no carcinogenics, plant-based, not lab-based, not a bad thing. Yes, ma'am?
Although the vitamin waters having to be retracted from the market in Australia because of their claims of what it actually provided.
This is great, and these are things I need to know because I'm 25 hours away from home. So not available here accordingly, or some things that they had in it.
Natural Lives magazine, the article about it.
So is it not sold here at all?
It's sold here, but they've got to change
The labeling.
Their labeling and advertising.
Okay. So it's sold here, you got to change the labeling, and here's why. Labels lie and liars make labels, and by law you can do that. And when I talk supplements later, you'll clearly see we can label anything we want the way we want to do it. So somebody delved into that situation and we'll start to change that. But for what it's worth, whether it has the product in it or not, or other products that they probably need to pull out, at least the sweetening agent is pretty much done with Truvia or Purevia or, the Stevicide, which is stevia. Lecanto is another one, just to kind of close you out a little bit. This is Donna Gates. She created what's called an ecology diet, and she said, well, I'm not going to use sugar alcohols, and I'm not going to use Splenda and Sweet and Low and Equal and all these other things. I'm going to make my own sugar. And for what it's worth, it's available online. And it's relatively expensive. And she took a non-genetically manufactured erythritol, which is a little piece of a sugar alcohol, and she added this fructose, or this lohan fruit, which is grown in the mountains of China, a very strong antioxidant, and she combined them and made her own product. And guess what it is? Heat stable. So unlike aspartame, which broke down a diketopiperazine, and the organization says causes toxicity at greater than 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, this one was relatively heat stable. So it tastes like brown sugar, looks like brown sugar, marketed very, very good, but expensive and available online. No calories, minimal or zero glycemic index, and pretty easy to manufacture for what it was. So this is something that's out there as an option, looking at the sugar alcohol and looking at the lohan fruit, or an anti-carcinogenic fruit, fructose, and again, non-genetically manufactured sugar alcohol. Simple product, but not really in stores, just something that's out online. Put your little closure on this one for what it's worth, and this is agave. And agave makes tequila. And again, it's a sap that's drained from a particular plant or a shrub like stevia. So plant-based, not lab-based, a little bit healthier. Done in a dark amber, also done in a light flavored, like a vanilla flavored, a little bit of a molasses in the dark amber. Two different kinds, light and dark. Low glycemic for what it's worth, about a 20. 4 calories per the gram for what it says up here too. Sweeter than plain old table sugar. Again, in using this on pancakes or using it in tea or some simple foods, like honey, teaspoons and tablespoons. Not a whole lot used in big quantities. Why do I share that? Because like honey, which is mostly sugar, but again, teaspoons and tablespoons, here's the nutritional or the caloric breakdown of this too. Fructose, fruit sugar, and some glucose. Remember, fructose in high quantities, real high quantities, can convert to fatty acids at a fairly alarming rate. So teaspoons, tablespoons, again, plant-based, not a bad thing. My mission here is just to try to tell you a couple of things that are out there. Plain old table sugar, remember, rise in triglycerides, rise in LDLs, big quantities, tooth decays, etc. Fructose, fruit sugar, not bad. Water, fiber, antioxidants. Too much, again, converts to fatty acids at an alarming rate. High fructose corn syrup, look, it's in a lot of stuff. Might decrease magnesium, chromium, copper from your system. House bill now in the States is trying to say, listen, it has mercury in it. Let's try to reduce this particular amount. Also, children of the corn everywhere. This stuff is super thin, supercharged, inexpensive. Might even tie into a little bit of obesity. Sugar, alcohol is easy. Remember, gas in the tank, though. You're going to have a hot date with just you. Kind of blows right through you. Again, fairly low glycemic. Aspartame or equal converts to diketopiperazine. Well-documented studies clearly share that. Again, 3,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight is a lot. We're not consuming that. But again, from the beginning of time, generally recognized as safe. That's what we have to go with. Not a lot of substance behind it. Sucralose or Splenda, chlorine. Sugar out, chlorine in. Your body excretes chlorine. But chlorine's in bleach, too, that we wash our clothes with. So again, how much do you really want to consume? Saccharin, been around over 100 years. Sodium, nitrogen, hydrogen. Again, simple product, been retooled. Why? It caused cancer at one point. It's been redone. Who's the spokesperson? The Pink Panther. Marketed, clearly labeled. How much do you want to consume? How much did the rats and mice consume? This much or big quantities? So again, very debatable. Stevia, relatively new product approved, was sold under the TGA Act or the DSHEA Act all over the world. And for what it's worth, very simple product, but plant-based instead of lab-based. Agave, same thing, made with tequila, but plant-based instead of lab-based. I appreciate your information, too, very much as far as the water product goes, because labels lie and liars make some labels. Did someone have a question here? Were you asking something? Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, they might, and certainly in the States it's done in volume. When you look back, and I'll show you really quick. Yeah. If you saw, hang on a minute, if you saw this particular, wait a minute, this one on Coke, where were we? If this is the ingredients in Coke, would you show that in a particular number because it had high fructose corn syrup, sucralose, or aspartame? Would it show a number, or would it show it listed in ingredients from most to least? Just a number. I gotcha. Unsafe, I got you. So based upon a number quantity, they'll share with you that this is safe or this is unsafe. So is there a neutral number, too, that says if it's higher than this, it's unsafe? If it's lower than this, it's relatively safe? I got you. Okay. So this is good stuff, but in closure, understand that whether it's a number or it's listed, my mission's here to say, listen, what is the product? What's it do? How's it break down? How safe really is it? If something is being told, too, that it breaks down to diketopiperazine, which is toxic in high levels, it's not about don't do, it's about don't go above a certain toxicity. But when you think about it, the numbers haven't changed in ages. It's been done since 1980 to current. So there's a few things on there. You gave me a lot of time. I'm extremely appreciative that you showed up. What I'll do is I'll break down on here. I thank you so much for being here. I'm Scott. If you got any other questions, I'll break this down. But thanks for coming. Have a wonderful conference. We'll see you during the week, everybody. Thank you very much. Thanks. Sure. Yeah, I'm going to shut that down in a second. Okay.
I'm a sugar crush, so